Welcome to the Cloud Pod, where the forecast is always cloudy. We talk weekly about all things AWS, Google, and Azure. We are your hosts,
Justin,
Jonathan,
and Peter. Episode 43, recorded on October 16th. The Right to Bear Arms. Hey guys, how's it going tonight?
Excellent, Justin. How are you?
Good. It's a late night for us here, so I've already had a lovely couple of drinks, but it'll be a fun episode for that.
Yeah, and I'm mixing it up a bit tonight. I'm drinking the Angry Orchard hard cider for a change, which is it's pretty good. Anyway, happy anniversary. What is it, 17 years?
Oh, yes, thank you very much. Appreciate that.
So I should probably fill in the viewers that I am not Peter.
Oh, yes, Peter is not here tonight, so we have brought in friend of the show, of course, Ryan. Hi, Ryan.
How's it going?
Yeah, I forgot to introduce you. You're such a regular now that I just...
We're getting comfortable at this point, which is great.
Yeah, not too comfortable.
Yeah, we haven't known each other for 2.5 years already. We think we'd have rapport, but you get on the podcast and it all falls apart. So yeah. That's how it goes.
It's all virtual.
Yeah, exactly. I know what eyes you're giving me at this moment. Like, oh, he's glaring at me through the audio. I can tell. That's how it works.
Maybe.
Yeah, it's very judgmental.
Well, that's Ryan in general. It's very judgmental.
Yes, that's definitely.
Well, did you guys know that this week the reInvent event catalog opened up? Did you guys get into anything, or were you waitlisted for all?
I'm mostly waitlisted, but I did get into like 2 or 3, which is a high bonus from the last several years I've tried.
It was pretty good, but I feel like there's so many sessions between 10 a.m. and 11 a.m. on the first day. It's pretty frustrating.
There was a very high quantity on Tuesday, Wednesday that I was like, why do I have so much overlap? I did sign up for bingo on the wait list today just because it sounded interesting. I was like, what does Amazon bingo look like?
Oh, wow.
Sort of curious. I think it's whole hangovers from my recent cruise where we played a lot of bingo. I was like, I'll try that out. But yeah, no, I did pretty well. I got into a bunch of container stuff and a bunch of Kubernetes courses, so I was pretty happy. But if you haven't gotten your registrations done yet, you're definitely going to be on a wait list. So do that sooner than later. But as you go through the week, by the time we get to Wednesday, my schedule's irrelevant anyways. So many other things have happened that I'm more interested in. So I don't show up to half my sessions.
I was interested in hearing about Amazon's approach to running a service-oriented org. And I did get into the deep dive on CDK because, we need ammo for when we get Ben Kehoe on the show. But I'm really hoping there's some last-minute sessions around the new services or features to fill up the kind of the second half of the week.
Hopefully. They did make some changes this year. We typically have done a lot of EBCs, and they cut those back this year, so they're only allowed to do 2 or 3 per company. So that's a little bit of a bummer, but we'll make it up with other fun things. Maybe we'll do a podcast meetup or something, and if people are interested in that, definitely send us a note on Twitter or on our contact form and say, yeah, a meetup would be great. We would definitely be open to doing that. So
cool.
All right, let's get into the news. Amazon Firewall Manager now supports VPC security groups, which is what I would have thought a Firewall Manager would have done day one. But it did not. So as of October 10th, you can now define, manage, and audit organization-wide policies for the use of VPC security groups. You can use these policies to apply security groups to specified accounts and resources, check and manage the rules used in the security groups, and to find and then clear up unused and redundant security groups. So this is actually starting to get to be a product that I can actually use.
Yeah. Now I just have to decide whether I want to undo 2 years of my own automation to do the exact same thing. Or do I... Yeah. No, this is long overdue. I'm excited to see them do this. It's one of those things that I'm really happy to see them provide. Anyone who's adopting this can start, across multiple accounts, provide their own security group, and it's fantastic.
Yeah, I think it'd be useful for things like the Route 53 health checks, where the source IPs are potentially one of hundreds of IPs globally, which you need to allow through to your applications. And you don't have to manage those in every single account or every single region even, or even every single VPC. So being able to push those out from a central location is going to be great. But I was especially pleased to see that it also supports notifications on change of any of these firewall rules. So if an attacker did manage to make it in and change any of these things, then you have a way of getting visibility into that.
It is interesting, though, only a single account can be designated as the firewall admin account, and that account has the permissions to deploy the WAF rules, the shielded advanced protections, and security group rules across the organization. I do hope that at some point they kind of get that federated out so I can give the security team maybe access to some parts of it, and then a network team to other access parts, or some other combination of splitting those rules out across different organizations.
Yeah.
Well, if you've been super excited about the C5 instances with up to 100 gigs of networking, Amazon's pleased to tell you now you can get them on the M5 and the R5 instances. This now allows you to, depending on the instance size, get up to at least 100 gigabytes per second of networking. Now, like for example, on the M5 8x large, it doesn't mean 100 gigs. It means without the N designation. So this is the M5 versus the M5N 8x large. You get 10 gig on the normal, and you get 25 gigabits per second on the M5N. So that's a pretty big enhancement. For that additional bandwidth, you'll be paying about additional $200, $13.89 for the M5N versus $11.28 for the M5 8x large.
That's $200 per month, too, which is, it's fairly reasonable if you consider the fact that Amazon's rolling out racks of these things to support the backbone network to these. It's cool if you need that kind of bandwidth performance.
I guess the intention for this kind of bandwidth is not so much pushing this traffic out to the internet or to clients on the internet, but for moving large data sets around for machine learning and things like that.
Taking data to S3 and back, etc.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Or cluster, between clustered machines, if you're thinking like an organized storage containment.
These are nice, though, if you definitely need them more bandwidth, especially to things like S3. This is definitely a nice improvement, something that some people desperately need for their data workloads. Moving on, as you guys know, Jonathan's favorite instance type, the A series, has been out for a little while now, and they now have a new bare metal version of this. This is the A1.metal. These instances enable ARM developers to build and test natively on ARM-based infrastructure in the cloud, with no more cross-compilation or emulation required. This is good for applications that require physical resources and low-level hardware features such as performance counters that are not supported in virtualized environments.
Yeah, I read they had support from Ubuntu, Red Hat, SUSE, Debian, and of course Amazon Linux too, as well as ECS and EKS. But I think, I mentioned earlier in the year, one of the predictions I had for Google was that they were going to announce ARM support in the Google Cloud, and they didn't. And I was surprised because it's such an enabler for Android application development. If you have bare metal instances now, you can deploy ARM-based VMs, and of course you can run Android operating system in those and do either testing or development work, so it's pretty cool.
They are not the biggest boxes. They are 16 vCPUs and 32 gigs of memory, and it costs you right around $300 a month.
I guess some people still want bare metal for performance reasons, although with a Nitro hypervisor, the performance of bare metal versus virtualized servers have really converged, and it's very hard to justify running bare metal for performance reasons anymore.
Yeah, I just haven't had a use case in years where I care that much about that level of performance, where I need to eke every little drop out. And so it's at this point, because things are horizontally scalable and I just don't need to maximize per box the amount of performance I can get out of these things. And so I've changed, the design of certain applications and definitely changed the way I do business.
I feel like the use cases are more compliance related than they are performance and eking out every spare bit of silicon from those servers. I think it's more about, all these risks of hypervisor exploits, things like that, which aren't really a factor with, with the Nitro hypervisor anyways, but, they're just things that, people out there who sped FUD in the industry about virtualization and cloud are saying out there in the market.
I think most of those vulnerabilities were not so much hypervisor vulnerabilities as flaws in CPU design and execution pipelines and things. I mean, the hypervisors can go some way to resolving those, or at least protecting the VMs from some of those issues, but not all the way.
So I assume it's an answer to those people who are super paranoid, the government, high security scenarios, maybe even healthcare in some cases, that gives you an option that you can say, look, it's compliant because it's completely dedicated to me. So maybe it makes sense for them, or maybe it's something that you get some instance like this, you run Firecracker on top of it, and you do micro VMs of your own management, or maybe even VMware if you want to do that to yourself. Jeff Barr has a new blog post out about the journey the Amazon consumer business, as all we know it as the store, has taken to move off Oracle databases. This was talked about quite a bit last year with Werner's keynote, talking, I think, about AWS and maybe Amazon.com specifically. But then, it's taken them several years to move off of Oracle and move on to Amazon native database technologies. They go in to talk about some of the different things they had to do, and they had over 100 teams in the Amazon's consumer business participating in the migration, including well-known brands such as Alexa, Amazon Prime, Fresh, Kindle, Music, Audible, Twitch, Zappos, and many, many more. And as they do this final database, they do admit that they still have some third-party apps that still require Oracle, though, and have not been migrated. But anything that Amazon has built apparently has now been moved off of Oracle. And the migration was pretty large in size. 75 petabytes of internal data stored in over 7,500 Oracle database instances moved over to DynamoDB, Aurora, RDS, and Redshift. This reduced their database cost by over 60%, on top of the heavily discounted rate they already paid to Oracle. And they actually note in the article that most customers see a 90% savings. And then the latency of consumer-facing apps was reduced by about 40%, and switching to managed services reduced database admin overhead by over 70%. So that is a huge project. I can see why it took them many, many years.
Yeah, those are just staggering numbers. Just, the admin overhead, the amount of discount. It is crazy to think about an undertaking of that size.
Yeah, I think some of the admin overheads maybe cheating slightly because they kind of moved that work from Amazon.com to web services, and I'm sure most of that's automated at this point. But Amazon are paying AWS, I would expect, for the service. So, and I'm pretty sure they get a good discount.
I mean, how many millions and millions of dollars do they pay per month just in Oracle fees at 7,500 instances? I can't even imagine. So the other question that they talked about in the blog post was that their database teams can focus on doing a better job of performance monitoring and query optimization, all with the goal of letting them deliver better customer experience. And then they gave a couple examples of their the advertising business. After the migration, the team was able to double their database fleet size and their throughput in minutes to accommodate peak traffic, courtesy of RDS. And another team, the wallet team, migrated more than 10 billion records to DynamoDB, reducing latency by 50%, operational cost by 90% in the process. So overall, this is a really great use case. And if you've been talking about doing a multi-year Oracle rewrite and you didn't have the numbers to back it up, this might be a good case study for you to use.
Yeah, I can't imagine that Oracle's very happy about this press release just because of that. Just some of the numbers here are crazy, like 50% reduction of latency. Like, that's nutso.
Well, moving on to Amazon. For open source projects, they have now given you promotional credits. So this is if you are using Amazon Web Services for CI/CD capabilities, performance testing, upstream testing, or storage of artifacts on S3 specifically, you can now get funding for your open source project. Many projects, including Adopt OpenJDK and many more, taking advantage of these credits. And the one they're really proud about, they actually did a separate press release on, which is the new sponsorship of the Rust project. That's
really cool. They're sponsoring Rust. It's known for its easy to maintain code base. It's thread safe, it's fast, and it's seen a huge adoption recently by Google, Mozilla, and even Microsoft. And I guess even considering Rust as a runtime for Lambda, but even more than that, services like EC2 and S3 and even the Lambda service have been using Rust to help orchestrate some of the back-end operations like testing and artifact management, and Automation Firecracker too, another open source service. And it's good to see that Amazon are sort of funding some of these projects for a year at a time. You don't have to keep going back to them for money every month or every quarter or anything. So at least you can get some planning done and sort of be productive still without having to worry about when the next bill's going to come.
Yeah, they did say that they won't retroactively apply these credits, so you definitely have to be using AWS today. You have to be current on your bills, and you have to be using it for a set of use cases, but it's a very simple application process. There's a form you fill out, and then you'll get a response within 12 to 14 days if you'll get accepted to the program. So pretty great.
Hey everyone, Jonathan here. I just wanted to take a minute to thank the cloud consulting gurus at Foghorn for helping make the CloudPod possible. These folks truly get it. Cloud consulting experts since 2008, they are premier tier partners with AWS, Google Cloud Platform Silver, and Microsoft Azure partners. From multi-cloud to containers to moving full production workloads to the cloud under the tightest compliance, Foghorn's team of full-stack cloud engineers have been there, done that, gotten the t-shirt, and are ready to share their experience with you. If you're in the market for some talent to supplement your team, visit www.fogops.io/thecloudpod. www.fogops.io/thecloudpod. Foghorn, the promise of cloud delivered.
Well, I think last week we talked about Oracle finally reaching their FedRAMP status with the government. And so AWS decided to announce a couple things they got. So a FedRAMP joint operating agreement for High for the GovCloud, as well as several new moderate provisional authorizations across 18 services. So FedRAMP Moderate now supports 6 additional services, including CloudFront, Poly, WorkDocs, Workspaces, Direct Connect, and Service Catalog, bringing the total to 48 services you can use in FedRAMP Moderate, and then 14 new services in Government GovCloud for FedRAMP High, including API Gateway, CloudWatch Events, ECR, ECS, EFS, Elasticsearch Inspector, Poly, Code Deploy, Config, Direct Connect, Lambda, and Step Functions, bringing the total to 43 for High. So they laughed in the face of Oracle's, I think it was 7 services that they announced last week. Well done, AWS.
Yeah, and these services are really the ones which help drive adoption of their other services too.
I was surprised to see Direct Connect. Yeah, or that Direct Connect first instance would have been there a long time ago.
Yeah, I wonder how much of this is just a matter of like process, to get these things, because it takes time to get these things certified and get these reviewed and audited. And so I wonder if that's exactly what's going on here.
It takes a lot of process, a lot of evidence. You have to have a bunch of documentation put together. Then you have to have an agency sponsor the use of the service. And so until you have an agency who wants to use something like Poly, you can't just get it added to FedRAMP High until you have that use case that they can actually come in and audit against. So there's lots of things like that get them into being a FedRAMP certified company. And it's a very complicated process and multi-year process for many, many companies to achieve FedRAMP compliance. Well, Google has some new training for you. If you're looking at making the decision to use the cloud, they want you to choose it on your terms, and so they're providing a range of computing architectures to meet you where you are. In practice, this means choosing typically between Google Compute Engine and Google Kubernetes Engine. And the decision between compute resources and containers looks very different, and that's why Google is now providing you 2 architecture training paths available on demand or via classroom training: an architecting with Google Compute and an architecting with Google Kubernetes. Looking at these 2 classes, they're relatively similar in the first section, where they just basically give you basic GCP capabilities, and then they deep dive into things like load balancers, auto-scaling VMs, and GKE networking and persistent storage, for example. But overall, I think it's interesting that they've made this distinction that it's either compute or it's Kubernetes. It's not really both. And I really kind of see it as a both today. But what do you guys think?
It's definitely fascinating to make that kind of clean cut one or the other. I mean, I sort of see why you might split this off just to specialize in the compute engine versus the Kubernetes engine, just because Kubernetes has a lot of these functionalities built into it. But I do, I squint at the need to separate these 2 like that, where it's like I feel like you need to know both these concepts. You need to know which workload is better for the right job, and it is interesting.
Yeah, I agree with that, Ryan. I guess it makes sense if you're just starting out in the cloud journey and you don't have anything in cloud and you're going to go natively to containers. Then that's fine. But if you're an enterprise and you've already got existing workloads, I mean, in your offices or in a data center somewhere, then you're never going to move straight to Kubernetes. So you're going to need both, and to separate them seems kind of odd.
Definitely, I think it depends on the type of company they're going after, and if you're going for more greenfield applications, more startup-y type companies, then making this choice is important. Or I think if you're going after enterprise, I think you kind of have to do both and be more hybrid in that nature as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Google has released a new security health analytics capability. This is in beta today, and it's a security product that integrates directly into the Cloud Security Command Center, or the Cloud SEC, as they call it. Security health analytics help you identify misconfigurations and compliance violations of your GCP resources and take action on them. They gave you a nice case study in this article from AirAsia, and then we have a nice quote here from Muhammad Faiz bin Azmi, Information Security Automation Solution Architect at AirAsia. Being able to go to the new Security Health Analytics dashboard eliminates the guesswork of what we have it running and if it is secure. Now, anyone on our team, even non-security professionals, can go to this dashboard and see a list of the misconfigured assets and compliance violations across all of our GCP resources. We can also see the severity of misconfigurations, which help us prioritize our response. Security Health Analytics has really helped us reduce the amount of time we spend trying to figure out what's wrong with our resources. It's allowed us to use our time more effectively to identify and resolve more security issues than we could before.
This is one thing I notice as a trend. It's just the Google services seem to be offering a lot of native security aspects that, traditionally with Amazon and Azure, you have to have a third-party suite kind of offer the same sort of product. So this is very fascinating to see how much they're cutting into some of the, vendors' market share with these things. As far as, visibility, not all the other hyperscalers provide this. So this is great. I mean, anything that improves security, I like.
think I'd rather solve a lot of these problems at deploy time rather than waiting for things to be in production before you kind of spot that they're non-compliant with any of these benchmarks that you're trying to meet. But I mean, I guess there's always a case for production changes happening either by accident or because of attackers.
Well, I mean, as Oracle will tell you, compliance violations are happen because of humans. And so, clearly the humans are making all the problems. And so if you only allow yourself to be detecting the problems, then, you're still vulnerable. So,
with all respect to Larry, Ellison, and Oracle, they really have no business deciding who should or should not have access to my data. That's not one of their concerns.
There's a place for detect and remediate, and there's a place for prevent.
Yeah.
And then I think this is one of those areas where you're doing detect and remediate. It's definitely not a prevention product. It's not something that's going to prevent you from doing the bad thing. And I think it's a combination of both pieces you need to be really successful. Mm-hmm. But, they were a little bit weak on that back end side where detect and remediate. And so I'm glad to see something in the space for them.
Yeah.
Because you're definitely not seeing Palo Alto and others run to go fill this in their product line for the Google side. They see them fixing Azure, but not. I don't see Google as much in those announcements from those guys. Moving along to our friends up in Redmond at Azure and CIS as well. The Azure Security Foundations benchmark for CIS is now open for comment. Of course, security best practices are the best way to speed up securing your cloud deployments. And as an Azure customer, you can leverage this understanding by using security recommendations from Microsoft to help guide your risk-based decisions as they're applied to specific security config settings. As such, Azure has partnered with the Center for Internet Security, or CIS, to create the CIS Microsoft Azure Foundation Benchmark version 1. This has been out for a couple weeks here now, and they are looking for feedback from you, the customer, that you can provide via a simple email form or feedback through their website. Eventually, this data will be integrated into the Azure Security Center and their impact surfaced on the Azure Security Center Secure Score and the compliance dashboard. So if you disagree with something they're already showing you in those Security Center, you should probably comment now before it's too late and you're now fixing all the things that this CIS benchmark will detect.
It's great that they're offering this. I think it's interesting they're putting it for comment. I find it, like the security benchmarks aren't necessarily cloud specific, but it's one of those things where it's sort of, they tailor these things a little bit towards implementation as you move from the same kind of generic benchmarks and then how you apply them to specific providers. These things help people stay secure, so there's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah. I do think you'll start seeing CIS benchmarks get more and more specific towards different cloud providers' capabilities. I think they've all kind of started out very generic, and from there they start to get more full feature. They get more embedded into the technology available to you to secure your infrastructure, and they'll get more cloud specific over time. But yeah, initially they're going to be very broad. Initially,
I wonder why they were asking for feedback on these things, but then I guess the feedback can not just come from individuals or organizations, but even government bodies like NIST. And I guess it was NIST who influenced Microsoft to change their password policy after years and years and years of requiring or recommending even regular password changes. NIST said, no, that's not the best plan. Just give people strong passwords and to discourage people from, writing on Post-it notes onto the keyboard.
It's also one of those things, like, as anyone who's applied the CIS benchmarks and has completely broken their app by, trying to harden their server, I think these things are good to socialize, and not all these things are good for every customer, and it is a benchmark, it's not a rule, and I think they're very specific about that intentionally, and so it's the more they can get that feedback from customers, those breaking changes, the more that they can factor that into whether this needs to be a benchmark or it's just a nice to have. I think is a good thing.
You're definitely right there. Some of the CIS recommendations were kind of weird, like in Linux obscuring the etc issue file or the release file, so attackers would find it harder to figure out what they'd broken into. But of course that broke installers, which relied on that information to decide where to put config files and where to deploy binaries and things. So yeah, it definitely makes sense.
That's great. The Azure Monitor service has added the new Worker Service SDK for ASP.NET and ASP.NET Core Metrics. This is part of Application Insights, and this empowers developers and IT pros to observe, debug, diagnose, and improve their distributed services hosted on the cloud, on-premises, and through hybrid solutions. The new apps insights for ASP.NET Core 2.8 for web apps, and the same for the .NET Core Worker Service 2.8 for non-web delivers new value to developers, including support for more app types, new alertable metrics, support for ASP.NET 3.0 Core, and cross-vendor distributed tracing. And the one part that was interesting about this was the event counters are now available for new metrics. So they include metrics such as time and garbage collection, allocation rates, and thread pool queue length. But they've now made event counters make Windows performance counters now cross-platform, including Linux, macOS, and Windows. So if you ever really hated Windows Perfmon, you can now have it for Linux and macOS. So you're welcome. As well as they are adopting the W3 Trace context, which is supported by a growing list of vendors, including the Open Tracing Framework and many more, and meaning that traces will propagate across services, integrating with other app performance monitoring vendors who recognize the standard in the future. So that is nice interoperability that Microsoft is bringing to the table overall. Of course, it's weighed down by Perfmon first, but that's okay.
I have nothing.
Windows stuff I don't understand. Windows.
Yes. Well, like how you got top on Linux. This is a much worse version of that. Or if you remember Xtop, I don't know if you guys ever supported HPUX, but we had Xtop, which was the visual version of Top. It's sort of like Windows Perfmon counters. Yeah. That's the closest I can get to it. So there you go.
Ooh.
All right, well, that's it for new news this week. Move us into the lightning round.
Thank you, Justin. And I decided to stand in for Peter today because I probably wasn't going to win anyway. So let's start with Amazon ECS adds support for G4 instance types.
Luckily, not the G7, which is not being held at Trump's estate.
Not at Trump's estate, yeah.
Amazon Elasticache launches self-service updates for Memcached and Redis cache clusters.
Does it mean I don't have to update my cache, and it'll just auto-do it for me?
I mean, self-service tells me that you have to do it now. Before they did it automatically before, but now it's your decision when to do it.
Oh, this is a degradation, for sure.
For sure.
Amazon Inspector adds CIS benchmark support for Windows 2016.
I'm hesitating to make a joke about a 3-year-old operating system right now, just because I have to support this so much in my day job. I'm I want to make fun of this, but the reality is worse.
I do think Windows, I think there's a new Windows Server version very soon coming down the pipe. So I'm glad that the CIS benchmark is so cutting edge and so secure that it's, not even ready for the next version of Windows.
Absolutely. The AWS Console mobile application launches federated login for iOS.
I appreciate that they've now made the login process the same, but it'd be nice if they actually had features in the mobile app that I actually wanted to use.
Are you an Apple user, Ryan?
I am an Apple user, but I wouldn't even bother to try to log into the console with my iOS device. Absolutely not.
I've never tried to use it for work with the SAML and the federated login for our work, but I use it for my personal account, and it's nice if I want to reboot my EC2 instance. That's about all it can really do. So it's you're not missing anything if you're on Android. But I think they do have a version of this for Android. I just don't think the Android version supports federated login yet. So that'll probably be an announcement in 2 weeks from now. They'll be like, hey, AWS Console now supports Android federated login.
Watch out for episode 45.
There you go. We're seeing the future.
Yes. Amazon RDS enables detailed storage backup billing.
For a managed service, you would hope that it would give you detailed backup information and how it's built, but whatever.
Especially details on how much money they're charging.
Yeah.
This makes me think, what was it before? Oh no.
They were just billing you for the pretend backups before. So now you can detail analyze it.
Moving on, Amazon ECS now supports ECS image SHA tracking.
Okay, the ECS is supporting the SHAs in ECS, or is it the SHA from the registry? I'm confused by this title altogether.
I have no idea. I'm just a guy who reads the titles.
Pasha.
Dun. Nice.
Amazon Guard Duty adds 3 new threat detections. S3 block public access disabled, S3 server access logging disabled, and metadata DNS rebind. I
thought they had these already because I thought the very first thing they came out with threat detections was public buckets, but I guess not. And then metadata DNS rebind. Hey, Capital One, how's it going?
What's in your wallet? It's a USB stick with 100 million customer records on it.
Your metadata from your DNS. That's what it is.
We're in the finishing stretch Amazon API Gateway now supports access logging to Amazon Kinesis Data Firehose.
I got nothing. Sorry.
Yeah.
I was like API. Yeah, no, I don't know what any of these things do.
That's fine.
Either do we.
There's a new digital course on Coursera, AWS Fundamentals, Migrating to the Cloud. Maybe not so new.
Amazon's been preaching the migration story for 5 years now. I mean, forever. This is the first time they thought to themselves, you know what? A digital course would make sense for this concept.
You know, there's a new customer who's just like, new course.
How do I do this?
I would also like to know. Thank you.
And if you're listening to our podcast, we're here to help you.
Yeah.
Amazon Redshift improves performance of inter-region snapshot transfers.
I think no matter what, if you're trying to do snapshot transfers, it's too long.
Definitely.
Has there ever been one where you're like, oh, that was way faster than I expected? No, it's tap, tap, tap on the desk. Like, please be done. Please be done.
I just say that's coffee time. Like, that's time to go get coffee while I wait for it to transfer.
Well, don't forget, if it's AWS, we don't drink coffee, we drink Corretto. Only 2 to go. AWS Code Pipeline enables setting environment variables on AWS Code build jobs.
This is such a fundamental feature that's been missing that I'm struggling for words. Like, it's, of course you want through your pipeline to traverse through all these things, set your environment variables on your build jobs.
The product managers clearly saw GitHub Actions and went, oh crap, better get these out there real quick.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, even before, command line parameters, environment variables were the way to pass parameters to your applications. I mean, it's probably been like 40 years by now.
Any kind of customization, yeah.
Yep.
This is one of those things they announced the feature, and I'm like, wait, that wasn't there? How did I use this?
Which also would have been what you said when you beta tested it. You're like, oh, I can't do what I actually need to do. And you're like, then you put it on the shelf for 6 months, then they announced the feature, and you're like, wait, it didn't already do that? Well, no, of course it didn't. We now analyzed it 6 months ago, and we said it doesn't work. We just forgot, because there was 1,000 other releases between then and here.
And finally, Amazon QuickSight announces data source sharing, table transpose, new filtering, and analytical capabilities.
I mean, the basic concept of a reporting engine is to do filtering, so I guess, yay.
Yep.
Yeah, I would also like it to have analytical capabilities.
Yes.
So I'm a little confused. Didn't it have that before?
It does support spice dashboards. I don't know what that is, but it's spicy.
Who doesn't like hot sauce?
Especially in your reports.
And that's it for the lightning round. I would have liked to give myself the point for Corretto. I would have loved to have given Ryan the point for the hot sauce in the reports, but Justin takes it. Ryan and I can both say, for sure.
That's like a de facto at this point.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel the same way.
Jonathan's been coming back. Like, he was down. He was down like 8 to 14 like 5 weeks ago, and now he's up to 11 versus 16. So, he's coming right back. Now he wasn't in the game today, so it's unfair. But he probably would have had something quippy and would have won if he could have scored himself. As Peter made the rules, we can't do that.
Well, since Peter's not here, maybe I edited something funny in. You'll never know. Unless you listen. Well, thanks, guys. And that's the Week in Cloud.
Yeah, that's it. That's everything. Well, we will be back next week as usual. And if you have not got your registration done for reInvent, it's too late. You're on the wait list. So go get on the wait list at least. Hopefully you can get into some sessions for reInvent coming up very soon. And again, if you are interested in meeting the guys at reInvent, we will probably do a meetup on one of the evenings. We have not yet decided what that'll be or where, but we will keep you guys posted on our Twitter and here on the Cloud Pod as we head into prediction shows and a couple other things that are coming up in the next few weeks as we get closer to the Thanksgiving holiday. So get your predictions ready, Jonathan and Ryan.
Wait, do I have to do it, or this is clear?
Oh, you're just going to judge us later.
Yeah. No, exactly. This is I'm much more comfortable like quarterbacking this from my armchair.
Yeah, but you need to prepare to keep us honest. So it's an important job, and as you've seen from the dialogue on the show, that keeping us honest is the most important part.
Obviously, yes.
Yes. Well, we will talk to you next week.
Good night.
Excellent. Good night.
And that is the Week in Cloud. We'd like to thank our sponsor, Foghorn Consulting. Subscribe on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts, and tweet us your feedback at #TheCloudPod. Or join our Slack channel, go to our website, thecloudpod.net for sign-up instructions.